A very good morning. In today's lecture, we are going to discuss the edaphic factor, which is called soil. It is edaphic factor. Okay, how the soil is going to influence the number of organisms present in it and over it. That will discuss how soil formation takes place and what changes takes place in the soil in its composition with time. Okay, so these topics we have to discuss under soil. So first is a definition. The uppermost weathered and humus containing layer of the earth crust that sustains life is called soil. You all know the topmost layer of the earth is crust, and over this crust we have the rocky surface which slowly and gradually get converted into a weathered material, which is a loose material which has organic content in it, inorganic ions in it, and that is very important for sustaining life also. So that is called soil. Now if you look at the composition, there are two type of the substances present in soil. First is the mineral particles and second is the organic matter. Mineral particles, these you call as the organic material. So organic and inorganic, two types they are present in soil. There are present liquid and gases also, but they are present in a very small volume. However, they are important and they are uniformly distributed, so they are homogeneous in nature. Whereas when we talk about the solid phase, like the different salts of the mineral ions or humus or any dead remains, so whenever we talk about the solid phase, that is heterogeneous, means its composition throughout the soil is not uniform. So basically we have four different components in the soil. Minerals, they constitute about 45%, gases, which constitute 25% of the soil volume, water, that comprises 25%, and organic matter, which comprise only 5% of the soil. But this is very important, because for all kind of the interactions, for cycling of the nutrients, this 5% is really important. Now we have second law of Schimper's, which is applicable to this edaphic factor soil. It states soil determines the local distribution of the plants either directly or in relation to other factors. Means if we are talking about the type of flora at a particular place in a local area, the soil is going to determine the type. It may be alone or with the help of other factors like temperature, humidity, rainfall, etc. It may influence the distribution of the plants. So this is the second law. Again, soil determines the local distribution of plants either directly or in relation to other factors. Now how soil influences? First is it helps in seed germination. You all know it depends upon the type of the soil, whether the soil is pervious, whether it is porous or not, what is the aeration level in the soil, that is going to determine seed will germinate or not. Then size and erectness of the plants. Let's suppose the soil is very logged. The particle size is small, because of that the aeration is lesser, so the soil is very tight. So because of that, the hold of the roots will not be proper, so the plants, they may not erect properly. So it also determines what will be the stature of plants growing in it. Then woodiness of the stem, because when the water is being absorbed from the soil, it helps in the development of the mechanical tissue and further controls the woodiness of the stem. Vigor of the vegetative parts, how healthy those parts will be, that is also dependent on the type of soil. Extent of root system, what is the level to which the soil is allowing roots to penetrate. Then drought and frost resistance, that is also a matter of concern for soil. Because why? Because the availability of water in the soil itself is going to determine what kind of the water barrier plant is going to face, water shortage plant is going to face. So accordingly it will develop resistance. Similarly, because of the freezing temperatures, when the water it freezes whatever is present in the soil, and if it is up to the mild levels, again it is going to help plants to develop resistance against frost. Then susceptibility to parasites, because roots, they are in close contact with the soil. So whatever environment soil has, if there is some infestation of the microbes and parasites, that is definitely going to attack the plants. So it is making the plant susceptible to parasites. The number of flowers per unit, how many buds they will arise, what kind of the fruit yield will be there, that all these parameters, they are somehow dependent upon the nutrient supply, water supply, and that is being regulated by soil. Now all these, how the soil influences various physiological activities by in plants, that was proposed by Jones and Turrell in 1945. Okay, now we are starting with the formation of soil. How soil is formed. So it's not an overnight phenomena. It takes time. So it's a result of the action and reciprocal influences of parent rock from which the soil is getting formed. There is an influence of climate. Topography means what is the geographical location of that area. What kind of plants are found there. Animal diversity and age of the land, because I told you it's not an overnight phenomena. It will a very slow process, so the age also matters. So basically soil formation is dependent upon which factors? It is dependent upon the geological factors, on the environmental factors, then this is also on the biological factors in relation to time. Okay, so this is important because time matters. Time is a phenomena that is going to be counted in years. It's not within days or months, it is within years the process of soil formation will take place. Okay, so formation of soil, it is dependent upon what factors they are responsible for this. That is the geology of an area, what kind of environment is there, what are the biological influences, biotic factors, and over time all these, how they are going to influence the formation of soil from the parent rock. That is called, and the term for this used is called pedogenesis. Pedogenesis is the formation of soil. Now it results from weathering of the parent rocks. We will study weathering. Weathering is a phenomena under which the soil is getting, the parent rock is getting converted into the soil. Now we have different agents which are involved in it. Accordingly we call it physical, chemical or biological weathering. So first is different types of weathering. Physical weathering. Now physical means no chemical changes occurring in the rock. Means let's suppose the rock is made up of limestone or any other salt. It is not going to be undergoing any chemical reaction with the water or oxygen, so that ultimately that salt is getting removed from that area and results in the development of porous bedrock which finally disintegrates. No. So there is no chemical transformation taking place in the rock. Rather, there are the physical factors which are involved in the development. What physical factors? Like humidity. Here in the first picture you can see when these waves, they are going to touch and recede back, they are continuously wetting the rock surface and let it dry. So the same cycle continues, which acts as a stress for the rock, and ultimately this will disintegrate. Similarly, there is effect of temperature. This is a frozen lake. So you can see here when the stream is falling, it has almost frozen, and the chilled water, the frozen water, that itself has a penetrating effect on the surrounding rocks and it will disintegrate. Then similarly there can be effect of gravity also, effect of wind also. The last figure that shows the effect of wind. So because of the wind, see how streamlined the rock has been cut. Okay, so these are the physical forces which are influencing the disintegration of rocks. So it's called physical weathering, and these are common in the areas where very little vegetation is there on the rocks. You can see here little of the bryophytes etc. they are growing, but mainly these areas are which are directly in contact with the physical forces and not the biological one. Plants or vegetation, they are considered as the biological influences. Now the second type is chemical weathering. Chemical weathering means now a chemical reaction will take place in order to make that rock weak. So here mainly it's a contribution of the humid area. Humidity means moisture, and because all kind of the chemical reactions, they require water and air. Now we all know that rocks, they contain gypsum, limestone, they have calcareous content. So when they come in contact with water, the minerals present in them, they get solubilized, like sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, it is 2 positive, sulfate ions, chloride ions, etc. So when they combine with water, they are going to get solubilized, so they will be removed from the parent rock, and hence the rock structure will become weak. You can see here from these areas the minerals, they have got dissolved because of the water and air. So this is making the basic structure weak. Similarly, oxygen can also combine with those minerals and it results in the formation of oxides. Those oxides, when they are going to combine with water, they will form hydroxides, and hydroxides are water soluble. Similarly, if a rock contains lot of limestone, then the carbon dioxide will help in making it weak. So CO2 is going to combine with that limestone, and in the presence of water it will be forming calcium bicarbonate, and again this is a soluble material. So this is how various type of the chemical reactions, they result in making the rock surface weak, and it helps in their disintegration for soil formation. You can see in this picture there is another effect. See the water, that is along with the air, oxygen. So how this is going to give the kind of the corroding effect on the surface of the parent rock, and ultimately all this material will be dissolved in water and it will be carried to the shores where it will be deposited as soil, right? Now the third type of weathering is biological weathering. Biological means now living influences are there. So living organisms, they are involved in weathering of rock, means in making the rock weak for its disintegration. So we have bacteria, protozoans, fungi, nematodes, lichens, mosses. All these plants or organisms, they when start developing over a rock, they help in its weathering. Like if we talk about lichens, lichen is what? This is an association of algae with fungi. Now these lichens, as you can see in this picture, the lichens, they are developing over the surface of a rock. So what they will do, they will retain water, and they are going to retain it for a longer duration, which will result in the hydrolysis and carbonation of the rock surface. Rock definitely has aluminosilicates, so they will get carbonated and hydrolyzed, and ultimately they will be converted into the clay aluminosilicates. So now they are coming into the soil texture. Then these lichens, they are going to extract minerals for their own nourishment also. That also they are going to get from the rock surface. So this is how, this is one example of lichens. Similarly, the other organisms, fungi, nematodes, etc., on the similar basis, they are going to weather the rock. Now these are the examples. See a tree arising from a surface, from a rock, and ultimately that has disintegrated. And this we observe in case of many mollusks, shells. Few organisms, they bore small pits on the surface of rocks and they start living inside. So there also the rock parent material is going to get weakened and it will disintegrate. So this is how the biological forces influence the weathering of rocks. So once the rock has become weak, now it can disintegrate. Now it will lead to the soil formation. So that is the second step after weathering, called pedogenesis. Pedogenesis is actually the formation of soil from a disintegrated rock. Okay, so you understand, we had a parent rock which was a perfect structure, and then that rock is weathered, so that we have now the disintegrated rock. Disintegrated means now it is weakened one. Weakened because of the physical, chemical or biological forces. And then that will be converted into soil. So this is pedogenesis. So the conversion of disintegrated mass of rock into soil, that is called pedogenesis. It's a constructive biochemical process. So a lot of changes, lot of reactions they take place. Organisms like bacteria, lichens, algae, fungi, they are responsible for these reactions. Now here the remains of living organisms, they undergo, see all these living organisms when they are going to die. So they will undergo decomposition, and that will add the organic material to the soil, which is a kind of amorphous colloidal complex material called humus. These are very important for soil. Why? Because they can hold minerals over their surface by adsorption phenomena, so that the minerals are available on the surface of humus and it can be easily taken up by the plants growing in that area. So they increase the availability of minerals. Second is they are important because they retain moisture also. Okay, so what I told you, the organisms which are growing in that area, which are responsible for the all kind of the reactions, ultimately they are going to die. Their death and decay, that will result in the formation of the organic material in the soil, and that organic material is amorphous colloidal complex called humus. Humus is important. Why? Because by the phenomena of adsorption it will retain minerals over its surface, so that the availability of minerals to other plants growing in the vicinity, it increases. And secondly, this is also important because it retains moisture in the soil. Thus the layers of organic material and minerals, they keep on adding. Okay, so this process will go on for a longer duration, because I told you it's a factor involved is time. So over a considerable period of time, this process will continue, which will result in the formation of the layers of the organic and inorganic substances, and that is called soil profile. So in a soil, layers of organic material and minerals, that will be added. Like let's suppose organic layer, then there is inorganic layer of the minerals, then organic, and so on. This phenomena will take place for years, and it will result in the development of layers in the soil, which is called soil profile. So this is how the phenomena takes place from the very beginning. This is a parent rock. Now on this parent rock, different physical factors, they are going to make it weak. So the rock starts disintegrating. Then you will observe this is a bedrock that remains intact. Over it the rock has disintegrated. You will observe the parent material here, and the top surface, the plant material will be added on in the form of the organic material. Then slowly and gradually you will see that there is formation of the release of the mineral particles also, and different horizons they will develop. It means now the soil profile is developing, and when it is complete, then you will observe the organic material, mineral particle, parent material is there. You will observe different, see here there was no proper layer development. Here you can see we have a horizon A, horizon B, then there is horizon C, and bedrock which is called horizon D or R. So this is a proper ideal soil profile. It's an ideal soil profile, but depending upon the environmental conditions or the area from where the bedrock had started weathering, some of these horizons, they may be missing also. Okay, so horizons may be missing. That's why I said that this is the profile of an ideal soil where all horizons should be present, but one or two may be missing depending upon the conditions of that area. So what is soil profile? The arrangement of different horizons superposed one above the other in a cross section. So you cut a cross section, you are going to dig the soil, and you will observe that there are number of layers superposed over one over another. They are continuous, and these layers, they are called horizons, and this complete cross-sectional structure, this is called soil profile. So this is a diagrammatic representation where you are observing the bedrock. Then you have C horizon, B horizon up to which the roots can penetrate, and A horizon. And when we see it in a real area, the second picture that is going to tell you about the real profile, that is, you are having here the bedrock material. It's not a complete bedrock, that will be something below it. It has the disintegrated rock pieces. Then you have the C horizon, this is C horizon, B horizon, and A horizon. Okay. Now horizons, they are differentiated on the basis of, see, you can easily differentiate them on the basis of color, right? Texture will also be different. The porosity of these horizons will vary, and whatever is the structure and consistency, means the type of the organic and inorganic content present in that. So on those bases, these horizons are differentiated, and they may be further subdivided into sub horizons. Like for A, we have A naught, A double naught, A1, A2, A3. Similarly for B, we may have categories B1, B2, B3. So a particular horizon, depending upon the further changes in its composition, more layer may develop in it, and they are called sub-horizons. So we'll be talking about an ideal soil profile where all these horizons are present. So the topmost one is called A horizon. Sometimes it is differentiated. We have O and H above it. Means sometimes the horizon which is A double naught and O A naught. So these may be the alphabets designated for that. This is a humus layer. This is a organic rich layer where partially the humus is getting decomposed, litter is getting decomposed. Okay, so you may have any kind of the nomenclature. All of these, they are correct. So what is A horizon? A horizon is the topmost layer of the soil. It is rich in the organic material and it is light in texture. It's very light. It's highly porous. Now it is further divided into 5 sub-horizons. So the topmost, which I told you, that is also called the humus layer, H. So it is AOO, or you call it O1. So this is a topmost surface layer. It mainly has litter, means fallen leaves, twigs, etc. Okay, which has not decomposed yet. So that layer is called AOO. Then you have AO. Now the litter has started decomposing. It is losing its identity. It is not having proper shape so that you can recognize whether it was a leaf or a twig. So it is decomposing, partially decomposing. So you call it AO or O2 or O layer, organic layer. Then we have A1. So sometimes these three only, they are considered under A horizon, and O and H, they are separated. So in A, you have A1. It's a very dark layer. It has abundant organic material because here the litter is totally decomposed and mineral content is also very high in this region. A2, then it becomes light colored. Why? Because it does not contain minerals. Then A3 is basically just a transition layer from where the bee is going to start. Okay, so you can see here, this is a litter layer where the litter has just fallen. It has not started decomposing. So we call this layer as the H layer. Then you have litter which is partially decomposed. So you call it O layer, or other nomenclature is this is called A naught and this is called A double naught. Then you have A1. A1 is where it has fully decomposed. It is a dark layer. It has high organic content and minerals. A2, which is a light layer because it does not have minerals in it. And this is a transition layer between A and B, which is called A3 sub-horizon. The second layer is B horizon. It is called subsoil. That was called topsoil. This is called subsoil. It is made up of compactly arranged fine soil particles and it's light brown in color. In it, clay, organic colloids and water is present. Now it is further divided into 3 layers. One is B1. B1 is what? The transitional layer between A and B. B2, it has maximum amount of silicates, lime, clay and organic material. And it's a hard layer which is called pan. Pan is a kind of the impervious material through which roots, water, etc. they cannot penetrate. That is called pan. We will define this term later on also. So basically pan is present in this area and it has high organic matter, silicates, lime, clay, etc. Then we have B3 layer. B3 is again a transition layer and this is in between B and C. Sometimes you observe calcium carbonate and calcium sulfate deposits in this area. Then comes sea horizon. Sea is basically where the rock material has fragmented into pieces. So it's an irregular layer. It is rich in moisture because you all know we have underground water now. The water table is reaching, but it has negligible biological activity. So we don't observe any kind of the organisms, living organisms growing in this area. Then D and R horizon, this is the weathered rock material which has already been made disintegrated. I told you by physical, chemical or biological activities. So that parent rock which is weathered, that is called the D or R horizon. Further, it has no biological activity and it is impermeable. So you cannot go beyond that. Okay, now we were talking about the term pan. What is pan? Pan is hard and impermeable subsurface layer in the soil. It's present where? It's present in B horizon. Its hardness may be a function of, because it's very hard, so there is lot of compaction. Because of the clay present in it, there may be cement effect. And the commonest varieties, further we have three type of pan. It is iron pan, which is basically having iron carbonate, clay pan, which is mainly having clay packed compactly, and plow pan, which is a compact layer which is resulted from repeated plowing. No, this is a one which is mainly because of the human intervention. Whenever we perform any farm practices or before sowing seeds, the field is continuously plowed, and because of that plowing, the soil layers, they get settled over one over another, so that it results in developing a hard impervious layer at the base of the soil. So that layer is called the plow pan. Okay, so what is pan? It is a hard impermeable subsurface layer in the soil. It is of three types: iron pan, which has mainly iron carbonate; clay pan, which has abundance of clay; plow pan, which also has abundance of clay, but it has formed by repeated plowing. So this is an ideal soil profile. You have A naught where litter is present, A double naught. Then A naught where the litter has started decomposing, it's partially decomposed. This is this one. Then there is A1. A1 is, it's a dark layer where a lot of humus and lot of the mineral content is found. A2, which is light in color, all this dotting, it represents, it is equivalent to the color intensity. So A2, which is a light colored horizon, it doesn't have inorganic material in it, no minerals. A3, which is a transition layer in between A and B. Then B has further three sub-horizons. B1, which is deeper in color, and next is B2, which is again a transitional layer to C. Actually, B3 is considered as a transitional layer, but sometimes I told you we have calcium carbonate and calcium sulfate deposits in it, and then it is called the alluvial E horizon. You may found a separate name for this I. Okay, whenever you find the deposits of calcium carbonate and calcium sulfate in this region in B3, this is called the zone of alluviation. And similarly, we have here the zone of alluviation in the A horizon, which is designated as E. So you need to learn these zones also. So A is corresponding to alluviation and B is corresponding to eluviation, I. Okay, and this is written as true soil, because we are talking what is true soil, which horizons are called true soil. That is starting from the A2 till B2. Why? Because this is the area where the roots, they can penetrate. So the A2 to B2, this is true soil. Okay, then we have horizon C, that is having the pieces of rock, and horizon D or R, which is the parent or bedrock. So that's all for today.